Sorry, Father Brian, I didn't introduce you for your talk.
Good. So as mentioned, I'm the pastor of St. Ignatius Parish in Hyamsville and Urbana. I just want to share with you, sometimes it's good to have current heroic witnesses of those in international witness, but also one who is very active in the United States. His name is Jerome LeJeune. You know, Jerome LeJeune is he was a pediatrician, a geneticist, a man of faith, and a witness to life, and I just want to share his story. We need these good stories to know about a person and to be able to share it. He's actually up for canonization in the Catholic Church. He's up for venerable right now. This presentation is based on a book from Ignatius Press, Jerome LeJeune, a man of science and conscience. So, getting to know Jerome LeJeune. He was this rising star in the science world, loved to swim, walk, and bike, involved in Paris. His love for his wife and his family all throughout his whole life, just very much a family man, and had just a wonderful and beautiful marriage. A bright future in medical school, dreams. He always wanted to be a surgeon or a country doctor, and he wasn't sure but that was his desire. But it's interesting, he failed the surgeon test three times, and when he got to the fourth exam, he's like, I gotta pass this one. Well, when he got on the train, he took the wrong train, and the doors were locked by the time he got there. And basically, it was after that, it's like, I can't be a surgeon. And sometimes closed doors open other kind of doors, which led him to work ultimately as a geneticist. He was drawn to study the origins of Down syndrome. He had some connection with it, and he was very much involved in the research in the early days of understanding Down syndrome. There was a lot of confusion and superstition at the time. There was the question about, is Down syndrome contagious? Keep your children away from the Down syndrome. That was a very popular stereotype. Is God punishing us? There's a lot of confusion about Down syndrome. Only as a scientist in the early days as a geneticist, he says, I think that it might be a genetic, but I have to demonstrate it, and so he was involved in that. So he dedicated life to Down syndrome, especially parents and parents who would come in. And I remember reading a beautiful story of, there was one woman, she gave birth to a child who had Down syndrome, and she was so devastated. But when she brought her child to Dr. LeJeune, she said, he treated him like a prince. And all my fears just washed away. He just was, his presence, his love, and it changed my whole disposition just to see how Dr. LeJeune saw and looked upon my child. His little patience came first. He always thought that was important, how beautiful that is. And success came early for him in the scientific world. He really was a rising star, but he really saw his vocation as a vocation of love. I like that idea that in every one of our vocations, it's a call to love, each in a particular way, especially those who work with others, and how beautiful it is. He really took that seriously. A great mentor to co-workers, people loved him. Invited to speak around the world, and he would quote St. Vincent de Paul, says, what can we do for the poor? More. What can we do for pro-life? More. Yeah. We can do more, each in our own way. Now, don't let it be overwhelmed. You're not called to do everything, but every one of us can do something, each in our own nook and crannies, in our parishes, in our community, and so forth. Obviously, the gift and dignity of human life mattered to him. In 1969, he won the Allen Memorial Award, the highest recognition for geneticists. So he came to San Francisco. And when he came to the conference, they basically said, what are you planning to talk about when you receive your award? He said, I'm going to talk about the dignity of life with those who have genetic defects. They said, we don't recommend that. And it was interesting, they didn't recommend it, the eugenist movement of the idea of those who have genetic defects that we should recommend abortion. That should be our standard procedure. So that movement was coming up, especially in the late 60s and 70s. And he said, I will not stand silent amidst the trend to advocate the extermination of children with genetic defects. And basically he said this, he says, thank you for your advice, I'm going to do what I do. So he gave his talk in a very kind of systematic and just kind of laying out the dignity of those, even those who have genetic defects. And at the very end of the talk, no one clapped, but no one shook his hand. And that became the beginning of of less and less grants, less and less invited to science events, and less that the secular world was becoming ever more secular and very anti-life. And this very gentle soul was catapulted in the pro-life movement in France, about being a witness for those who have genetically, they're not lesser children, they're not lesser people, that they too have a dignity. He knew that there was a temptation to sentimentalism, right? Good intentions is not enough to justify bad actions. That's an important moral principle that we should be able to articulate to our neighbors, our peers. Just because it's a good intention doesn't make it good. The action has to be good too. Good intentions and good actions. Good intentions are never enough. There's a lot of things that were justified in the name of good intentions. A lot of great evil has happened in our world in the name of good intentions. I cannot go along, he said, it's impossible. No one should go along with this in the name of science. To misuse science and to be able to be outspoken, to be courageous witnesses that says, just because we can, doesn't mean we should. Just because we can do something scientifically, that's not the standard. Standard is not that we have an ability to. We have to ask ourselves, should we? Should we? And obviously in this case, that they have a great dignity. Pro-life and pro-love. We should tell everybody, we're pro-life and pro-love. It's not just one, it's two. Mother and child. Mother and child. Obviously, fathers as well. He used the words, this is chromosomal racism. I cannot collaborate in the extermination of children. A genetic defect should not be a death sentence. Again, he's kind of catapulted into the whole debates in France. If a human being does not begin at the moment of fertilization, he never begins, because where would he get any new information? Those with Down syndrome have the intelligence of the heart. The intelligence of the heart. We need to celebrate this and not advocate their quote-unquote extermination. And his fear was his discovery about that you could discover this genetic defect early on at a certain point, so many weeks into the pregnancy. His fear was they're going to use my discovery and they're going to recommend the abortion of these children in the womb. And that's what catapulted him. He says, I need to speak. I need to step up. I need to have courage in this. There were vocal protests. He would give talks, and they would interrupt his talks. Boo, boo, LeJeune. Death to Papa LeJeune and his little monsters. Like, that's what he was experiencing. Sometimes when he gave talks, it's like, are you kidding me? This is the early 70s. He said it's not about pitting mother against her child. It's always about both. A woman in distress, but also a child in peril. Both. Women and child. A woman in distress. How beautiful the L for listening. Because there is this experience of distress, of a pregnancy. By the way, can I just make a brief comment? The root of abortion is not abortion. The root of abortion is not abortion. We have to advocate chastity outside of marriage. The root of this, the promiscuity, is the root of abortion. It's not abortion. It's promiscuity. Now again, help people to live this, call people to say, outside of marriage, we need to honor that marriage is something different. But it's too important. The root of abortion is unchastity, is promiscuity. So we have to get to the root source. I remember talking to someone who works in public education. Like, why don't we talk about this? I mean, why don't we talk about that that this is too important of a thing just to share with anyone, that you're too much of a value, and that's the root of abortion. But because in our secular world, that's not talked about. But unless we address that, we're not addressing the root causes of it. He gave a beautiful analogy. He says, it's interesting, from the moment in the womb, he described it, there's an experience of the symphony of two hearts. That even the child in the womb can hear the mother's heartbeat. The mother's heartbeat. There's something very beautiful. There's a certain music that happens, ultimately, in pregnancy. He says these people who are like shouting and down, and they're doing graffiti on the wall, death to LeJeune, because he's speaking out. And he says these people are violent, yes, but wicked. That's not up for me to judge. I fight against wrong ideas, not against men. I think that's a beautiful Christian perspective. Look, they're violent, but are they wicked? That's not for me to judge. I fight against wrong ideas. And maybe when we're having these discussions and we're going in with those who have been misguided in various ways and maybe in extreme ways where that's all they've ever heard, we need to say, I don't think they're wicked, I think you're misguided. And to show a genuine charity, and that was our gospel today, wasn't it? Love your enemies, do good to those who hurt you. We have to have a compassion to say, there's been a lot of misinformation or misguiding. And we need to have courage and faith and to be able to have confidence and conviction to be able to educate others. Priority of family life. He was a simple man. I love his phrase about this. Science alone cannot save the world. I'll repeat that. From a scientist. Science alone cannot save the world. Science must be grounded in humility. We should be shouting this from the rooftops. There is an ideology that's called scientism. Scientism, right? Science can be good, right? It can be good and bad. But scientism is, science is the highest value. Whatever we can do in science, it's like, no. We need to be advocates, especially as people of faith, to say, science must be grounded in humility. It can't save the world. Frankly, only Jesus can save the world. Only Jesus Christ can save the world. God can save the world. But science alone cannot save the world. It must be grounded in humility. These children are extremely lovable. He says they're real children. The idea that anyone in our country could campaign to kill children because they're disabled is something I cannot bear. So he was moved to this true compassion to really just to step up and to be able to be a witness and advocate. Who will be the voice for the voiceless? This is a really important story in his life. And he was reading the morning paper from Le Monde in 1970. And a statement by the National Association of Physicians in France, they committed the association to public support for abortion. And he was like, when was this discussion happen? And it was pushed through. And he literally got the guy on the phone, the president of it, and he said, hey, when did you do this? What did you do? If you're doing this, count me out. Count me out. Take me off your list. I don't want anything to do with it. And he said, well, I was told everyone was for it. Absolutely not. We didn't have any discussion about this. And because of that stepping up in statement, the National Association of Physicians changed its stance. Because he was outspoken in that moment, and he stood up when they said no. I thought they said everyone was for it. Absolutely not. I am not for it. I will not stand for this. I'm here to tell you the value of sometimes one person standing up. One politician standing up. One doctor standing up. Each one of us, to have courage and sometimes conviction. And sometimes to get a few others, right? We can kind of come with a little posse. How beautiful that is. But never underestimate the value of you can turn a conversation in a room or a public forum. I remember learning that early on. There's the whole art of that, right? Of how to turn a conversation at the right place in the right time. To have courage and conviction, to prepare. Sometimes there is one of the values of a morning like this is to be able to walk away with some talking points. So when we're in an elevator conversation or on a Thanksgiving gathering or a summer picnic, when assisted suicide comes up or the life of the unborn, we have a few talking points. We prep them in a way that's affirming and encouraging. And said, yeah, we believe in two, not just one, because mother and child, we believe in two. We're pro-life and pro-love. How about you? So we can have one of these is to really, to be able to take some time out of our day and weekend and step back and say, let's have some more refreshing talking points that we can share with others and to help people along the way. When they said science is now concluded, he's like, no, science is not concluded. I absolutely disagree, and I'm a scientist on this board. I disagree. And that affected everything. Well, they heard about some of the Down syndrome children, heard about these debates he was starting to get on, but they less and less would put him on the public because he was very effective. So they wouldn't invite him anymore to these public debates. And a Down syndrome child came up to him and just hugged him, my professor, defend us. And they knew who he was standing up for. Dr. June, I listened to the TV. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for loving us. He was a prophetic voice to the media, prophetic voice to the legislator, and also to the church. There was a situation, unfortunately, there was a big bill going through France. And he was like, I need to speak to the archbishop of this. And at the time, unfortunately, it's rather embarrassing. But the auxiliary bishop interfered and said, Jerome, Dr. LeJeune, and he said, "You're worse than this, you're worse than that." And he was so speechless, and he's like, and he told his wife, he's like, the auxiliary bishop told me this. He's like, "What'd you say?" And he said, "Nothing, because I was always taught to respect the bishop." Now, there's a healthy respect for bishops, and there also is a time to speak up, right? The prophetic voice is necessary also in the church. His wife is supportive of you. Force them to look reality in the face. That's not always pleasant, even if said tactfully. But there goes a long way with saying things tactfully and prudently, speaking up, right place, right time. That's what the virtue of prudence is, right? Right place, right time. Right place, right time, right way. It is rare to hear voices like yours. They have the courage to go in against the current's fashions. Remember, what do the scriptures say? We have to be willing to say things in season and out of season. In season and out of season. Lord, give us the courage because we're ultimately rooted in Him. They tried to make the defender of life into a bad guy. I fight against wrong ideas, but not against men. This is a great kind of way to say, like, look, well, that person's against us. That politician is doing this. Those politicians in Maryland that are pushing assisted suicide. Yeah, they're pushing very bad things. They're very misguided. And they need to know the reality about the dignity of all life. Can I just do a quick sideline on assisted suicide? I heard a great way of explaining that. They said if you saw a man on a bridge, ever heard this analogy? If you saw a man on the bridge and he looked like he was going to take his life, what would you do? And what if he said, "I'm too afraid, will you push me?" And actually, it's not, but look, "I'm too afraid to do it myself, will you push me?"
No way.
Is that if someone pushed him off the bridge because he was afraid, you should arrest him and put him in prison. And that is what assisted suicide is. "I'm too afraid, I need someone else to do it." No one would push a man off a bridge. No one would push a man off a bridge. We need to have the courage and confidence to say, don't push anyone off a bridge, even though they really feel like they need it. The doctor's role in the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. Do no harm. And that reality to have that conviction and said, if a doctor medically pushes someone off a bridge, you should be in prison. You should go to prison. And I'd advocate that they go to prison. Maybe the person with mental health issues doesn't know better, but you know better. You should never have the right to push someone off the bridge. So when that one comes around and it's out there to say, would you push someone off a bridge if they asked you? Because that's what assisted suicide is. No, it's just death with dignity. No, you're pushing a person off a bridge. It's in a very difficult place. We need to love them through the difficult, and many times they said with the temptation of depression, and even those with some health issues, with difficult health issues, there's many times there can be periods of phases of depression. That's not uncommon. But the number of people who had phases of depression that came out of it is vast and many. We need to love them enough that we're not going to push them off a bridge or take them to a doctor who would do the other. I fight against wrong ideas, but not against men. Let's change our attitude with how we see people. They're misguided, they don't understand. We need to speak up, and we're working against what they're saying. I don't hate them, but I work against what they're saying and ultimately doing, that they might know. We need to have a holy stubbornness, right? Holy stubbornness and faith that we are our brother's keeper and help. And obviously it does involve persuasion, doesn't it? It's not about, we can't make anybody do anything, but we can try to be persuasive with a witness. That's important. But Paul, although the Archbishop of France was weak-kneed during that time, during those political movements, Paul VI appointed him to the Pontifical Academy of Science. So not just the Catholic Church was like, well, this one fell short. Paul VI raised him up. He sang in the choir. Sunday was a priority. We have a date with the Lord. You can't skip dates, he would tell his children. Because he would travel around. He's like, you can't skip dates. Yeah, even if it's another language. We're going to church on Sunday. We honor the Lord's Day. A man of prayer. Prayer is like tuning one's interior transistor, connecting them to the Creator. How could he persevere in the difficult times and the unpopularity of the early 70s? How could he persevere in the 70s and the 80s in the science world? Because of God and His grace. I am the vine, you are the branches. Apart from me, you can do nothing, John 15. But if you remain in me and I in you, if you remain in me and I will you, I'll give you my joy. Your joy may be complete. There can be a certain joy to be an advocate for life issues. To say, yeah, I'm okay to be out of place in this. I'm okay to be out of place. I'm pro-life and pro-love. I invite you to be pro-life and pro-love too. And tell others, don't you want to be pro-life and pro-love? Oh, no, I'm pro-life and pro-love. Don't you want to be pro-life and pro-love? Jerome's greatness was seen as ability to be present with one others. And I like that back to the L of love and listening. We know to listen to people who are genuinely on opposite sides of issues, to hear them and to walk through the process. And certainly that requires a lot of patience, doesn't it? We all have friends and others who completely disagree with you, and whatever this says and this, well, let's talk about it. But do it in a patient way, and you've got to be in it for the long haul. But the goal is we propose it. We don't impose it, but we propose it. And to find things to say, yeah, I mean, sometimes, again, back to the question of assisted suicide. To be able to say in a conversation with, well, I think it's their body and they should be able to do what they do. I don't think we should push people off bridges. I think we should just have little statements that we say, and maybe that's the end of the conversation. But I don't think we should push people off bridges, even if they feel like they want to be pushed off the bridge. And to use kind of analogies and examples of that goes a long way. Oh, this is Jerome in a talk. He was defending the uniqueness of humanity. He said, in the zoological gardens, I've never observed a group of chimpanzees wondering whether they were growing up to be academics. On this planet, humanity, man is the only person to ask himself where he comes from, who he is, and what has he done with his brother. There's something uniquely about the human condition. We're not dolphins, we're not beavers, we're not raccoons. There's a uniqueness. We're made in the image and likeness of God. We have intellect, will. The quality of civilization is measured by the respect that it has for its weakest members. Can I share with you? Do you know Robbie George? Robbie George is a professor at I think Princeton. And he said this. He said, and this is more for pro-life people, or for most people who are sympathetic, people of faith. And he said, he was talking about slavery, and he said, raise your hand if you were at that time, raise your hand if you begin against slavery. And everybody raised their hand. He's like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I'll give you 5 criteria of why I don't believe you. Because at the time, if you were against slavery, you would have been outcast of your community. Give me an example where you've been an outcast community for your beliefs. I don't believe you'd be against slavery. And about this, and he said, here's the consequences if you were against slavery in the 1800s or whatever the time was. And he went through 5 criteria of saying you would not be against slavery. And he said, but there's something worse than slavery that's happened in our land. It's the taking of human life in the womb. And I'm inviting you to courage and conviction about the dignity of all human life from conception and natural death. But how beautiful it is, sometimes we need to say that, yeah, don't think that people were against slavery, you wouldn't be against slavery. We need to have an attitude of saying, it's not always going to be popular. Society will always be different, but we have to be different people. We're pro-life and pro-love. Wait, what are we?
Pro-life and pro-love.
What are you?
Pro-life and pro-love.
What should every person be?
Pro-life and pro-love.
Yeah. Don't you want to be pro-life and pro-love? We need to be on the affirmative, right, talking about these understanding. He was mistreated by the French press. The United States invited him regularly to be an expert on different issues. So he came to the United States a lot. He came to Nashville. He came to different areas. Jerome, they're graffitiing the wall. He used to ride his bike. They would have, other people would have expensive cars. He kind of rode his bike to work and would come home and have lunch with his wife. He was a very simple and very just good man of faith and family man. But he saw this on the way. There were a lot of pressure. Science without conscience is nothing but the ruin of the soul. He's very quotable. Science without conscience is nothing but the ruin of the soul. By the way, this whole presentation I'll make available if anybody's welcome to it. So you don't have to I missed this, I missed that. We'll make it available to you. He said, I'm absolutely on the side of the little ones who have no voice. Oh, that's so old-fashioned, outmoded. But the outmoded truth has the same youth that it did 2,000 years ago. Call me old-fashioned, okay. I use the word timeless. I like that word, right? Old-fashioned. That I'm against the taking of human life. Okay, call me old-fashioned. You know, sometimes there was very popular, right? Make sure you're on the right side of history. Where's history going? History is going to have assisted suicide. History is going to, I want to be on the right side, not of history. I want to be on the right side of eternity. The right side of eternity is the only thing that matters. I'm hoping to be on the right side because the right side of history rushes off cliffs all the time. And I'm not looking forward to, I'm not going to rush off a cliff with you, sorry. I want to affirm the culture of life, which is a different way, a countercultural witness. That's ultimately the message of the gospel. Why would you not be resolutely, absolutely on the side of life? Will you join us? So, by the way, he spoke out against transhumanism because that's right here. It's on our doorstep. We need to be educated more and more on issues like, do you know transhumanism, right? More and more of us connected to machines, and you know, there's a lot of morally problematic places. Obviously, the question of we do want to really stand with compassion with women, and the question of helping moral fertility treatments. But we can never support IVF that involves the destruction of embryos or freezing embryos, wherever they're not body parts. And how many women I've known that really have a desire for life? That's a good desire. Remember, good desires is good. But it's not just good desires, it's also good actions. So the number of hundreds of thousands of frozen embryos that will never be used. They're creating life for the sake of one, and sometimes I have to put it in perspective. Like your desire to have children is a beautiful desire. That's a beautiful desire. But we can't do any and all things for that desire. No one would create 7 children and kill 6 of them for one. No one. No one would create 7 or 12 children. Go either the elimination of 12 of them or 11 of them, or the perpetually frozen for the sake of 1 or 2. No one would do that. Sometimes I say you shouldn't do that. But are there medical treatments to be able to have fertility? These are pro-life issues that we need to talk more about with the question of IVF, because it's kind of got catapulted, right? Well, Francis has spoken a lot about it. One of the Catholic churches is articulated, but obviously it's a delicate subject. But it's also not a delicate subject, because the issue of the destruction of frozen embryos or implanting them and deselecting them, this is not the way of life. He was invited to meet John Paul II. He spoke for 2 hours with him, and then he had to get on a plane. And he said, a society that kills its children simultaneously has lost its soul and lost hope. And after meeting with John Paul II, he got on a plane. He had to get back to his students in Paris. And the plane was delayed for like 3 hours with no explanation. They're like, oh, what's taking this so long? I got to get back. It was on May 13th, 1981. Remember what happened on May 13th, 1981? Right after meeting with them is when John Paul II got shot in the square. This doesn't have the sound on it, but it's... But it basically tells the story of that was like right after meeting with him is when he got, Pope John Paul was shot May 13th, 1981. And you know what that day was supposed to be? That day John Paul II was supposed to announce the Pontifical Council for the Family. Was the day he got shot. It's interesting, right after that, he had gallstones. So Jerome LeJeune was in the hospital, John Paul was in the hospital, so the Paris papers had like, here, Dr. Jerome LeJeune is in the hospital with gallstones, and John Paul, and they're like, and his wife's like, you made the paper with the Pope. You made the paper with the Pope. He's like, I didn't intend to do that. Many experienced the discouragement. That's why he's here. He's a prophetic witness. Although he experienced being discouraged, he persevered. Science alone cannot save the world. Technology is cumulative, but wisdom is not. Science always thinks as objective as its claim, isn't always as objective as it claims, and people think. I'll repeat that one. Science isn't always objective as it claims, or as people think. Well, science is just objective. The science says, well,
No, it's not.
it's not always as objective. Sometimes there's a lot of money involved, whether it's Planned Parenthood or otherwise. Science isn't always as objective as it claims. And people think that idea to have a scrutiny on science is holy and healthy. In a TV debate in response to don't impose your morality on me, he says, we live in a democracy. I must participate. Actually, this is really important. Who are you to tell me what to do with my body? Hey, we're in a democracy. I must. Are you saying I can't participate in a democracy? We all get to participate. Not just you. All of us. That's really important in a participatory or representative democracy. He spoke against the abortion pill early on. I demand that our country, we do not start killing children chemically. He's in the early stages of the fight. Medicine and science is not just for healthy people. You who are for the family, you will be mocked. They will wave in front of you the specter of science that's supposedly being gagged by an outmoded morality. They will raise against the tyrannical standard of unlimited experimentation. Bishops, do not be afraid. You have the words of eternal life. He was calling the church to be, he says, we have to be prophetic, especially in our world. Funding dried up, less and less conferences. But he's like, I'm going to care for the patients and the parents of those with Down syndrome. And he went all in a heroic way. I think sometimes we need to remember the scripture verse. What profit does a man gain the whole world and lose your soul? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose your soul? He started a home for those in crisis pregnancies, care for parents with those with Down syndrome. Testified in Tennessee, hey, life does begin at conception. We need to articulate this. Remember, it wasn't too long ago that there was this ideology, it's the pre-embryo, it's not an embryo. Like, that's not a scientific statement. There's no pre-embryos. And this idea of, I'll never forget a talk, and they said, here, I just have one question. It was a debate, a pro-life debate. He says, I just have one question. This is the only question that matters to me. When does life begin? Well, I don't know. Well, if you don't know, as you know, you can't shoot in the bush. Hunters can't shoot in the bushes. If you don't know, then you can't do it. Well, I don't know. And when does it begin here? When does life begin? That's an 8th grade science book question. Life begins at conception. 8th grade science book question. Maybe not in the 8th grade books these days, but they might have taken it out. But sometimes we need to say, that's an 8th grade answer. We know absolutely, there's no such thing as pre-embryos. Life begins at conception. Now coming out of hope with our dignity. I'm just going to, in December 2nd, 1993, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. They said he was a patient. How beautiful it was. Love for the Eucharist, very Catholic, he just known for his love for the Eucharist. He died on Easter Sunday. How beautiful it is. So I guess just in conclusion, I'd just say this. Here's someone who his love showed to the least will be celebrated most in heaven. I want to be on the right side of eternity. I want to be able to stand for it and have courageous that I was a witness of life. Because we're pro-life and we're pro-love. We're pro-life and pro-love. Tell everybody, tell your family members. Well, actually, we're just trying to be pro-life and pro-love. Tell others about his story. It's a great story. Scientist, witness of faith, life in the littlest among us, Jerome LeJeune. May he intercede for the pro-life cause in all its ways. So, God bless you.
Thank you, Father Brian. And I was just reminded that in Iceland, there's no down babies born.